Hello, and welcome to Tribe of Humankind, episode 16. Today's Sunday, October 8th. Lex and I have come together once again because maybe you, like us, we contemplate the meaning of life, not just in a philosophical way, but because it means a lot to us to understand who we are and what we are and what's going on around us. And that it may be important for our entire collective as humanity to come to a awakened understanding or group consensus of what's happening in order for us to properly address the problems we're facing and our way forward, as well as to identify those who are interested in supporting the continuing life of humanity versus those who seem to be placing other goals ahead of that. Lex and I, as well as my friend's son, have been in a good conversation for a couple of hours already tonight. And we've covered a lot of good topics, and we want to record a little bit of this conversation for public to look at and take in and contemplate. And I'll let Lex introduce himself and maybe share a few points about what we've already discussed tonight that are present with him right now. And I'll throw one more curveball at you, Lex, and just if you'd like to weave in anything of the current events, both personal, but also maybe what's been alive in my mind today is the new conflict stirring in Israel, and how it seems many places on the earth right now have the war machine revving up. And your thoughts on that, and as well as what we've discussed so far, and we'll get into tonight's conversation from there.
Okay, well, I'm here every week, so people probably know who I am. It's just been another week for me of dealing with the world as it is right now, which is lots of people who are confused and not very well, and not being able to reach them with the truth of what's happening in any way to help them, but still having to deal with the fallout, which is tough. It's tough to look after people, well, all the time. Anyway, but I'm continuing my work of trying to be as helpful and useful as possible. And we did have a really nice conversation with Sun, and the part of it that stood out for me was that you guys were really okay with me pushing you a little bit to explain what you meant by frequency and vibration, and that my reasoning was that I think there's this rich conversation that's beyond a lot of the keywords and buzzwords that everyone is stopping at. So somebody would say, well, we need to raise our vibration, we need to be higher frequency, and that's the end of the conversation. And I think that that's the beginning of the conversation. And it's a great conversation, and it's one that actually does start to engage us with our true power and our real magic and psychic, cosmic, grounded selves. And so I think they're important conversations, and I think that we all need to start having them, which is why Shane's going to indulge us, me, by helping with that. With the Israeli stuff and the war machine, my personal sensation and knowing that started a long time ago was that we're going through something that's a bit of a cycle. My perception is that there is something in our reality that is dark and I don't think it's in balance. I don't think it should be here in the way it is, personally. I think it's parasitic and predatory. But one of the things that it does as a cycle is create huge amounts of conflict and suffering. And it's just doing that right now everywhere. And it's going to pick up pace. And so anyone that's listening that considers themselves to be conscious or awake or spiritual, as well as either looking at that or not looking at that, I think it really is time to sort of check in with who you really are and your real feelings. And, you know, if there was ever a time to be authentic, whether that hurts or not, I'd say it was now, personally. I'd say, you know, real conversations about real things, and people that, and connect. So the real us connects with the real somebody else, if possible. But if not, we just have to sort of say, okay, and still care and still connect and hug and love. And, you know, it's difficult for everyone, I'd say.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned a lot of good things there, Lex. So maybe you can go one layer deeper on why an authentic, you know, communication from a person and authentic relating with another is so important right now.
Well, I think it's the natural way of things. It could be naive, maybe it never was, but it certainly seems like the obvious thing that the soul or the spirit or the consciousness of each one of us should be the thing that thinks the thoughts and says the words and makes the choices and lives the life. But that's not where we are. People seem to be almost trapped by their own minds and the programming, and that the programming lives their life for them and they're just passengers. And so if you see two people if I see two people having a conversation, I see that their programming is conversing whilst the real people are sort of silent. You know, I don't see soulful conversations. I don't see spirit interacting with spirit. I see mechanical mind and character and what people call the ego and the illusion of self having illusory conversations, and it's empty and it's sort of pointless, really. I think the best way I can say it is that if you have inner dialogue, some people don't, if you hear yourself thinking sometimes, those thoughts, if you're listening to those thoughts, then you must be something other, right? And that's the real you. That's one way to sort of say, well, this is me. I'm the person that listens to my thoughts and sees the world and that sort of stuff. And ideally, that would be the you that then thinks and speaks. And so if you had two people who came to that realization, they would have a real conversation. They would really be talking to each other. They would really be witnessing each other's presence. They would really soulfully connect and communicate, and that would be, you know, normal.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the personal liberation is talked about in Buddhism and stuff like that. And people, when they say they're awake, I think there's different versions of awake.
Yeah.
I think the most awake version you can be is to be the real you. And when I say the real you, I mean the user of mind, not, you know, so, and that's the trick, is to get to the point where you realize that mind is something you can think into, and you can change your perceptions, and you can be really in there. And so now your mind is part of your soulful expression, you know, like that's part of the work, is to move just from being an observer and a witness into being mindful, if you like. But that fullness needs to be you, not programming.
Yeah. Lex, I know you're really um, motivated when it comes to speaking about spiritual community, putting their high ideals into action, and not detaching from the world, but to show up in presence within it. And when you see um, conflict revving up in these different countries, what's your advice to people, or what would what's your take on people being revved by politicians to show up and soldier up on this side of the battle line versus that side of the battle line?
So it's complicated. I believe there's some sort of almost etheric, conscious, spiritual, cosmic aspect, which is thoughts and intuition and psychic and all that stuff. But there's also the real eating, digesting food, going to the toilet, getting hurt, getting tired, having to sleep. And these things merge and they meet. And I think that the conversation they have is what we would call heart. And that's where that conversation happens. And I think that the world at the moment is has been almost set up to fail. And these conflicts have been tendered and sort of nurtured and purposefully created. But there is also genuine suffering. The Israeli nation, for example, occupying Palestinian space, people could argue, well, it was always Israel and they've just taken it back. There's lots of, it's been set up. Lots of people were involved in making this happen. And I'm a member of lots of Palestinian sort of groups where I watch what's happened, and people are, the circumstances they live under and the torture and the punishment and the beating and the murdering and the killing of children, nobody ever talks about it. Nobody gives a fuck. Soon as they do it back to the Israelis, it's on every news station all the time. The tone that people talk is the outrage, the lack of humanity, and it should be applied both ways. And so there's something strange happening there. But the world is about to ignite. There's going to be this happening everywhere. And we're going to need, I'm not going to say cool heads, but we're going to need to find some sort of balance and be there for when the fires burn out and regrowth is going to happen. I don't see a way to stop what's about to happen in the world. It's going to kick off in lots of ways. I think spiritual people will get through that as best we can. There's potential after that, when it calms down, to in all the different ways, just by our actual physical presence, by the things we say, but also in a sort of a weird psychic way. I think we could be part of the something that happens after.
What do you see as the spiritual warrior path while it's happening?
It's really difficult, isn't it? The majority of the world's minds have been hijacked and programmed into this polarity, which has set it up for this conflict. And then there are those of us who sort of, for various reasons, manage to see through the illusions, not get taken in by the game, if you like. I'm not sure there's anything that we can do really with any of that at the moment. Yeah, don't have a better answer than that. Survive, carry on doing the work, carry on growing, and be in your location an emanation of balance, discernment, wisdom, and psychic and spiritual energy, maybe.
Mm. when we were talking earlier and Sun was a part of the conversation, we were realizing that it's going to be necessary for us to begin to talk with each other, even though we're all coming from slightly different perspectives. I mean, even me, you, and Sun, we kind of had 3 different views on just about every topic, but we saw the necessity to be able to like speak our truth and lay it down next to someone else's truth and have someone else speak their truth, and to be able to be in an open-minded, open conversation to start to see where some of our truths intersect or connect or can live next to each other in a way that helps expand our understanding versus limit it. We came up with, you challenged the common term of raising vibration or frequency, and you asked the question, what does it mean to raise frequency, raise vibration? And a very good conversation ensued, and maybe you can explain where we arrived and how we got there and why that's important.
So a lot of the people that have good intentions and have this intuition to move towards spirituality instantly join into conversations and become familiar with them, and then begin to sound the same way and have the same conversations, and they're quite scripted, and they end with sort of positive affirmations about raising vibration and raising frequency, and that is the cure all, that's the solve, and that's what gets us out of this mess. First of all, it's not very detailed about how to do that or what that means. Secondly, I don't actually think it's true at all. So, for instance, people would say that low frequency is bad. They will literally say, oh, that's low frequency. So if we take a piano has a range of frequencies. You could take an orchestra or, but let's just take a piano, has a range of frequencies. It has a lowest note on there, which is very low. It's not evil. It's not negative. It's not bad. It's just a note, right? And the top note on the piano isn't angelic. It doesn't make the world a better place. Playing it a couple of times doesn't suddenly cleanse your house of bad spirits, right? There's not enough explanation happening here. A piano is a beautiful thing because of the careful selection of notes, and the bass note and the top notes you get, you create chordal harmony. And so if you take that to the chakras, people would say, well, you need to get out of your lower chakras into your higher chakras. And I'd say the same thing. No, you need all the chakras to be active. They each contribute something incredibly useful, and they each are a match. And I don't even believe in chakras, but I'm going to go with it. Each one of them would be a match, and they would all need to be on. And then you have all of the notes. You can make melodies. You can create chords, all that sort of stuff. That analogy's running out now. So frequency isn't the issue. It's what we're thinking, how we're thinking relates to how we feel. If we watch a romance movie or a horror movie, we're going to feel very differently. So where we place our attention and how that attention is placed is incredibly critical. So really, I'd say that our consciousness and our awareness is the issue, and the complexity and alignment of our thinking. And that's not as sexy as getting my chakras cleansed, but it's a major part of it, right? Because if you believe a narrative that's not true, you're going to feel and react and behave according to the narrative of your awareness. So what you're aware of, what you believe to be true, what you know and don't know, all these things are incredibly important. So I think spirituality is, amongst other things, is being constantly on the search for truth. And then you could throw in being, gratitude and positivity. You could say that's high vibration. So for instance, if I have a glass and it's half full, I can either label it, narrate it, the way I use my mind to perceive. I could say, well, it's half empty, right? And I could feel like, oh, it's half empty. Or I could say, oh, it's half full. And I could feel, oh, it's half full. So perception, the mind aspect of our being, is incredibly important. And I think when people talk about high frequency, what they're saying is positive dialogue, and little things like making an effort to notice things that are beautiful or make you feel better, and knowing little tricks about eating food or going to the right place at the right time and watching the sunset. So the activity that people call higher vibration is actually, it requires some intelligence, it requires some planning, it requires some strategy, and it requires some follow through as well. You have to action it. So I think that when people talk about vibration, higher vibration and higher frequency, it limits the conversation so much that so many people are playing along and pretending they know what that means, but actually they're not being given the tools and the instruction and the methods and the practices that genuinely will make them able to squeeze the most out of their lives. So I think those are important conversations. I may have said too much. Over to you.
No, it's all good stuff. I guess I wanted to address, you're helping us to focus in on this word usage, but let's also focus in on the meaning behind the words. Like people say a lower vibration, sometimes they can refer to like root chakra survival being maybe like your food, your water, your clothing, your shelter, maybe even your medicine, those things you need. And all of us are working jobs or making money, trying to take care of that survival level. And then we have like a sexual level, sacral level of like attraction and sex drive, and that motivates us to do lots of different things, especially as teenagers and young 20s or young 30s. It's like, and then we have our third chakra level that could be referenced into power, where we want to see our influence and effect on others and see our ability to sway the outer world, or people can get into a shadowy aspect of their power and want to see if they can dominate or control others. And when we look out on the bigger planetary scale, we can see these three things kind of driving our society. And then the question is, what else is there to be considering, and how do we bring that into play in our conversations, in our lives, and in the bigger population structure?
So for me, it's not all about mind. There's feeling, there's direct experience, but it does come down to awareness. Even just having certain conversations, if people have the time, if they were not pulled into this, survival, the real world, keeping the body alive, reproducing, being warm, eating, that sort of stuff, this is real. Without that, you have to exit the game. You're not a player anymore, right? So those are fundamental. But I believe that we are in a situation where we have been purposefully limited to that. We've been kept so busy. Resources and abundance has been withheld purposely, and taxes and laws and all of the ways that the world is. It's a controlled limitation, restriction, time-wise, energy-wise, resource-wise. It's difficult for people to then invest in developing the rest of them and becoming complete. Even emotionally, emotional literacy. If we're doing chakras and we're going up, emotional literacy, having a voice, being able to communicate authentically, having moving towards wisdom and not just knowledge, and receiving mysterious knowing that isn't from a book, and connecting to things that are almost not even physical anymore, almost magical, cosmic, or whatever. To do that is difficult. Some of us have managed to find the time, circumstances given us the time, we've done that, and we know that it's a real thing, and we know that it completes us. It puts us together fully, and we come online in a much more. Everyone deserves it. Everyone should have by right that completeness. And so when I judge people, I'm judging them as incomplete, and it's not necessarily their fault. Some people would never make the effort, but some people have never had the chance to become that full spectrum, complete circuitry of amazingness.
And so when you engage with someone, ideally you would hope that they were able to access all those different levels of their being in the conversation, or to hold that full range perspective when they're talking about a topic.
Yeah.
And that maybe looking from that place that includes all those things you just mentioned, like emotional intelligence, a voice to speak your truth. Maybe we'd add like the visionary creative aspect, and imminence of awareness or contemplation of the beyond, before this life, after this life, beyond this life, like concept of where life is coming from, and that impulse. These kind of bigger world questions would inform smaller world conflict, like that's happening in Israel, that's maybe happening in Ukraine, that's maybe happening in China, or that's happening in the streets. Like if we could start to access that fuller range of ourselves and bring all of those into the conversation, we would maybe be seeing different realities and accessing tools and landscapes for different potentials.
Yeah, we would be what we all have the capability to be, and we would be contextually different. I loved football. I played football. It's a lovely game. I was a coach. I walked past some pubs tonight, and there was people cheering, and the noises they were making. It's okay to engage with that and be that sort of primal, primitive, basic a bit, but it's got to be in balance. It can't only be that. And for most of the people around, it's only that. It's never more than that. There's no conversation about spirituality. There's no conversation about consciousness. They can't even imagine themselves being part of the conversation of how the world should be, how we should educate, how we should live, is war right, all that sort of stuff. They are so trapped in what you would call the lower chakras by circumstance and by education and the mind fuckery that I don't want to use this word, but it's retarded, basically. If anything that you stop from being its full expression, you are retarding. And so, the people of a lot of people in the world right now have been unfairly, unjustly retarded. And so it's very difficult to, they're not fully there. Like, you're not really talking to the real them. You're talking to sort of an amount of them, a limited amount.
Like stunted growth.
Mm.
And from that stunted growth perspective, maybe it's like almost below the table. You can't see up above what's on the table or anything there. You can only see what's under the table, and that limits the reality playing field that you can engage with or interact or create from.
Yeah.
I feel like often we don't hear anything on the subject of love. It's like political leaders don't talk about love. Like we're not dealing with, hey, is it loving to do that? Is and that conversation's not on the table, along with maybe the other things we mentioned, like, but emotional love, these aren't a part of the conversation. And I feel like these are indicators that they're working with a stunted, retarded amount of their spectrum, or they're intentionally inciting that low level impulse from others, whether they really believe their words or not, or just wish to put fuel on the fire of lower level conflict, to not maybe speak about, hey, what's the loving thing that's going on or not going on that's fueling this conflict? Because then maybe it would make a lot of sense. What are we saying with our words or not saying with our words that's not matching up with truth or accuracy, that could also be fueling this conflict? What visionary outcome are we holding for humanity? Or are we holding a visionary outcome for domination? Like, there's so many factors. Like, what's the meaning of life, and why are we here, and what are we doing? Like, that could factor in, and it doesn't. Because then it would be like, hey, are we here for one political egoic identity to dominate and control another one? Is that the highest thing we could be doing with our lives right now? And I guess I'm speaking these things that they may seem abstract or far-fetched, but to me, they're indicators that the people we're watching are television, these quote unquote leaders. We have to be able to identify the fact of what energy centers they're operating from, or what limit of range within their energy centers that they're accessing, speaking to, and encouraging to excite or enrage or motivate other people from, versus a full spectrum themselves, encouraging a full spectrum in others, inviting a full spectrum conversation.
Agreed. So the reason I pull on frequency and vibration and all these things, ascension, 5D, and all that sort of stuff, is that I think that it's garbage conversation, and it's happening and taking people's time and energy, and it's giving people a feel good factor because it's an activity that's happening in one of, let's say, one of the chakras, right? But chakras you could call it aspects, right? So the imagination, the creativity, the emotional content, having a better vision and a higher ideals, and imagining the world being a better place. I'm not saying that shouldn't be there, but if that then isn't put into the whole circuitry of all the chakras or all the aspects, so your sexuality and your taking care of business and your eating and your physical and your I think that when everything's online, when you are active in all of your aspects, or let's say all of your chakras, when they're all, your awareness is in them, and that awareness is intelligent. It's not just an energy. It's not just a vibration or a frequency. There is actually conscious presence in the details of your sexuality, in the details of your eating, in the details of your thinking, in the details of your speaking. So your conscious presence is in, let's say, all of your chakras, right? And has done work to be right in all those places. Then you have a full expression of consciousness through all of your aspects, right? That for me is what we're really going for. Because as you put each one into the circuitry, it contributes something which creates an overall balancing of each one. So you won't be too fantastical and flighty. You will have, from your let's say lower chakras, more realism. You'll take your incredible imagination and you'll take your absolute grounded realness, you put them together and you get a new flavor, which is what is possible. What can I actually do right now? What, you start to get these new relationships between your aspects, which changes all of your aspects. It balances them. It balances your chakras, right?
Yeah, maybe gives you brings you start to bring different choices into your eating habits, or the quality of your food, or the quality of the time that you spend around eating or taking in food, maybe a different presence to that. Or, and like you said, maybe it changes the quality of your sexual energy and the way you want to engage in your relationships. It maybe changes your quality of power dynamics to where you're having equal interest in seeing other people's power be able to grow and achieve its own fruition as well, to where you don't feel threatened by that, or the need to control it, or to have more than and lesser than, or something like that. And it starts to inform all those aspects. And I would say that's an ability within the reach of all of us. And I would also say there's quite a few human beings who I see operating on these higher levels across the planet, but I don't see many of those in leadership positions or power. I see them in the community at the very human grassroots level. There's many people operating on a very high conscious level. And then when I look at political leaders and movements and corporations and the power centers on the planet, they're never speaking anything in a very one, intelligent, enlightened, encouraging, inspiring manner. And they're never encouraging that higher aspect of the human nature within others, nor are they presenting a vision that's moving humanity in a beautiful direction. It seems to always be like the complete opposite of that. And I think, I guess what I'm hoping is that there's more and more people awake to seeing that and not settling for that anymore. Not settling for taking the news or the information or the leadership or the persuasion of people who are operating at such a limited version of themselves.
So we've been talking, you said Tribe of Humankind as the title, and we're constantly wondering about this shared space that everyone can arrive into, where there's enough commonality, enough agreement, and from there everyone communicates and connects, and it starts to hopefully spread, and the way of doing it is seen and copied and redone over and over again, and it sort of like spreads like a wildfire, and all of a sudden people have remembered how to like each other and see each other as similar and understand each other more and all that sort of stuff. And during that process, everyone has changed. Everyone becomes less of something and more of something else, and a bit more of this and a bit more of that. And so everybody can benefit and receive. And it's a similar sort of principle. It's like different people are exaggerated versions of aspects, or lit up on one particular chakra or a few chakras. And so the save for us is that as a species, we light up all our chakras. We are activated consciously in all our aspects. And if some people are more activated in one than another, it balances out over everybody, and everybody sort of collectively has something to offer uniquely as well. That's something that has to be factored in. Each one of us is unique in some way. So you've got the strange thing where people have forgotten what uniqueness is, and yet everyone's pretending to be unique by copying other unique people's dress sense and styles. And like, you get groups of people. I'm rare, I'm different, look at me, I'm not like everyone else. Like, they literally joined a group of people who all agreed that they were different and not like anyone else. So actual uniqueness, real uniqueness, that's another. Healed people can be unique, and we're all traumatized and damaged, and we've been abused generationally, and there's so much fucking shit going on. But uniqueness is difficult if you're in pain, and if you're wounded, and if you're scared, or you've had bad experiences. So even being unique is something that needs to be cultivated and gently healed back, you know?
Agreed. It's another characteristic, like it's in such a natural way. Yeah, like uniqueness catches our attention and holds our attention, and it's fun to look at and observe because it is so different. And I think, it's not by accident that it's so attractive. And we need to be able to see and discern these qualities of uniqueness of someone who is not taken the common path, but have walked a path by themselves, that have given them unique experiences that no one else has gained, and now they've got that to share back with the collective.
Yeah. So people, spiritually, we start to relearn how to bring treasure back to the group, and that each one of us has to do it ourselves in our own way. And that's the only way to bring it into the group, is to do it alone and to do it uniquely.
Yeah, and I think as we start to understand what works in between, like, small groups of humans from one to the other, we can apply these to our larger scale humanity of like, hey, these same precepts need to be applied from big bodies of people, from one country to another, from one group of, language speaking of this to this language speaking. Like we have to be able to acknowledge the unique gifts coming out of each culture, out of each indigenous group of humans, out of each, subgroup of humans, of like whatever, it was like that has developed and bringing forth unique gifts, and how can we help support them to stay strong and healthy and alive. And like we said, that full spectrum chakra, like they need to be able to eat and have homes and feel safe and comfortable, and they need to be able to have space to have their sexual energy go out and meet other people and be excited and turned on by life in that way. They need to be able to feel their own power and express it, like, and if we're thinking on that level, then we're making space for all that and making a protective space for that to happen. And we're not threatened by that. We're aware that that's going to be necessary for the healthy organism of the individual, the healthy organism of the entire species or planet.
Absolutely. I've seen, there's a lady who's been posting videos. There's a few people I took their YouTube, Facebook presence, and I follow them, and they travel through different parts of the world, and it's so moving to see them move through a place where you can sense the energy of the land is different, and just everything about it is the flavor of the different places is just so beautiful, and you can feel that this, what we're opposing, what we're trying to heal off this planet, is trying to make everything the same. It's trying to make every country the same and everyone the same, and and to some point it's been successful. So as healers, fixing that, is going to be part of the job, isn't it? You know?
I feel like another topic that came up earlier this evening, before we started recording, was our joy, our
Yeah.
personal joy, and how we maintain that, how we protect that, or more importantly, how we find it again after we lose it, because it's easy to lose it. And I was wondering if you could speak to that a little bit for us, Lex.
Probably so where I struggle is that when I talked about the aspects, I'm probably slightly over dialed into the grounded reality based stuff. I'm pretty heavy in heart. That's happening. I've got that online, and so there's quite a lot of pain there. Um, and I don't get the benefit of spiritual bypassing. I don't get the benefit of faux spirituality. I get the real spirituality, which is quite painful at the moment. I mean, so ironically, I think for me, my joy is to disengage from the big picture quite a lot and to go into the past and, or to look at videos of people traveling through America and Europe and just be in the moments they're spending walking through the mountains or driving past Lake Garda or, and yeah, just do the best I can to dial in to reality that I can find some pleasure in and some peace and some, you know.
It seems you know throughout your life you've had access to, or a range of sensitivities or awarenesses that seem to exceed maybe your immediate family or friends or school community or something like that. And whatever that is, for whatever reason, you didn't shut that down completely, but you continue to pay attention to it and allow it to inform your life and shape your decisions and shape your personality and soul throughout your life. And so I guess what I'm speaking to is the fact that is there joy in knowing that there's that type of inner communication or guidance that's kind of leading you into one, both in some ways a more painful place, and in other ways a more alive, full spectrum version of your life that you might, I would guess that you wouldn't want to trade for anything else.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, so yeah, so I've used this phrase a few times, but bittersweet, I'd say, and that's probably an understatement. It's like, you know, bliss and agony almost. It's like they're swirling around in me. And I think that's part of the being a mystic and being a shaman is being in that place. Um, I think I'd be a lot more joyful if a lot more people were in that space,
Mm-hmm.
doing that as well, sharing the burden and thereby, um, like I wonder, like, what's the point of it? Maybe I should just like, why am I even bothering? Why don't I just withdraw completely from anything that I don't like and sort of create a little fantasy spiritual bubble? So it's tricky. Like I'd say my joy has felt like it's on hold
Mm.
until it's like until enough people sort of are on board. I'd like to be part of a community where people are spiritual, but the real spiritual, I have to leave the presence of people that are being faux spiritual or spiritually bypassing because it grates on me as inauthentic and and that I'm not really connecting with the person. I'm connecting with their scene of their set of their theater, and I don't feel it. And then they say unconditional love all the time, love unconditionally, and all that sort of stuff. And that's the time I love them the least, if I'm honest. So, yeah, so I mean, ideally, it doesn't have to be 100% painful, but part of the pain is wondering where everyone else is.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. And the desire to maybe see the like richness of your inner world reflected in others, or like that they have that richness within themselves as well, and that they have that authenticity and uniqueness to offer to you, to like inspire you, and to hold, uh, true empathic space to connect with you in, and to be able to dream with you and be challenged by your perspectives, and still hold like peaceful, calm, welcoming space while that's going down. And
Yeah, so not a big ask, really.
not a big ask. No, it's not. But yeah, so there's that, the balance of that desire, and then like, is there also a belief that there's even more territory to continue to traverse on the inside, that could continue to lead you to new ground?
Well, I think one of the things I'd say is that another way to talk about aspects of self is in psychology. A lot of people talk about connecting with your inner child. And the way I think about that now is that the inner child is the real you, and that for most people, they go in and it's been called by psychologists your inner child, but really it's you. And the reason it's a child is because it's been there since it was a child, and it doesn't get to come out, and it hasn't been able to develop and evolve and replace the pretend you and live, right? And become an adult. And so that's how I see that now. And I see that, I'd say for me, there is no inner child. I am me, and this is me outwardly. And so one of the other issues that I find, perceive, is that when people do begin to become authentic, what really comes out is a child. And so it's even more tricky than that, because to be in an equal relationship, I need somebody that's done that long enough to have become an adult,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So, and so mostly I find myself in the position where what I'm trying to do is be a protective adult, protect the space, um, guide, mentor, um, without being seen as controlling or arrogant or, do you see what I mean? Like, it's a really tricky thing. And I find that most people, I would say that most people I've encountered spiritually, let's say aspects or chakras aren't all activated. The inner child hasn't spent a lot of time out, and the spiritual dogma is actually character based. It's not the real person really exploring, being present psychically, magically. It's actually still mind. But the programming now is you are spiritual, raise your vibration, 5D, ascension, blah, 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 right? And actually, you're still not even talking to the authentic person. You're talking to the machinery of mind that has been loaded up.
Mhm.
So it's really complex. There you go.
Yeah, yeah. Does it need to like create or secure enough space for your true authentic self to feel comfortable fully opening in?
Yeah, which is rare,
Mm.
really rare. I've done it a few times in our talks. done it in some other talks with some other people. I open up and go full throttle sometimes. But most of the time I feel like I'm the adult in the room, trying not to sound like an adult.
And in your understanding, it's almost like your inner child that has been given permission and space to be present and express through you, to the point now where it's more like your inner self and being there, and that inner self is full range of delicate and sensitive and powerfully creative and pure, and in that pureness needs a certain amount of respect and recognition and kindness to be able to be fully seen and be fully present.
Yeah. And I, in terms of like the idea of healing, the greatest gift you give somebody is to safely protect them through that transition, birth that, literally birth, midwife the authentic self, and then sort of, you have to be a guardian. You have to be a guardian if you can. Careful what you say, aware of how delicate, sensitive, still in a very steep learning process, etc. There's a lot to take into account. And it's like a responsibility, and you can get it wrong easily, and then you can feel guilty. Oh, I've gone too far there. And also I'm male as well, so that's got to be taken into account. I am male. I've got a male perspective. Tough love, pick yourself up, get on with it. So there's, but okay, where I was going with that was, what an amazing thing for healers to be able to do, not just to talk about chakras and higher vibration, but to actually connect to the genuine, soulful, conscious spirit inside, to protect it, to create a safe space for it to be freed, released, back into, liberated into full presence.
Yes. And what a beautiful and powerful thing to do, to be consciously, actively providing that for others who are still dipping their toes in the water of seeing if it's safe enough to do that, or maybe they haven't fully allowed it, but if you're already unfolding that space in front of them to welcome it, it could maybe encourage and facilitate that releasing of the inner child from the cage or the background perspective to more of a front and center aspect that you'll get to engage with. Mm-hmm.
I keep seeing these things playing out like on different scales. There's like a city is like a cell, and the organs of the body, and then the body, and then the ecosystem, all these different levels and stuff. But I keep finding these reflections, like, we have physical parasites in the environment and we get rid of them. Our species is currently suffering from physical parasites. We need to get rid of them. What's happening with children, right? Physically, for real, is also what we just talked about. That's actually sort of a similar thing. It's like rescuing the children from the fucking underground bunkers. I know there's a real version, but I mean, it's like a metaphor. It's like the same. Our species is almost like that.
Yeah, it's happening on the physical and the metaphysical level. And if it maybe wasn't happening so much spiritually with every human being, we wouldn't be seeing it happening so much physically as well.
Mm.
If we had our awareness to creating safety and space for innocence, to come out and interact and engage and be respected and honored, and to be a part of the conversation, you know. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And for me, I'm learning, I'm experimenting, I'm doing the best I can. I'm not finished by any means. It's very difficult to do the work on your own. I think you get to a certain point where I can't do any more on my own. I'll keep refining what I've got. There's stuff that you need others to move forward together as I think it's supposed to be a group at some point, like wise heads, different perspectives, different energetics, different psychic resonance, and that it becomes a sort of a super organism, a super mind almost, that clarifies and brings online in each of the group more. And that, I think, is one of the next phases that I'm interested in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like starting to integrate more and more of the collective gifts within humanity. Like, hey, this person's displaying these qualities in a really beautiful level. Like it's admirable. It's, you know, inspirational. And like, I would like to bring my, you know, consciousness to that similar level as that being over there, that, you know, or this aspect of my personality that's maybe more atrophied or less expressed, to in that fuller strength that's similar. And as we start to bind together, we can call upon each other's different gifts to help navigate the tough situations that our humanity, society is being confronted with.
Yeah, and so rightly or wrongly, I feel that groups, healers healing healers, there are levels of development, and people are ready for certain communications and at certain times. But I think there are graduations, if you like. It's not about ability that you've reached degree level. It's time, and you know, you need time to process and go through the different phases from beginning to learn basic maths all the way through to quantum mechanics or whatever. It's not about talent. It's not about ability. It's about time at the wheel, and and for people that have put a certain amount of work in, that have got to the certain points, if they could be matched, if they could be in a team of people that are also at, let's say, degree level or whatever, yeah, they can teach. They can go back and teach O level. They can go back and teach A level. But to really progress, you need to be around people that are pushing you, and that are, when you say something, they're ready for that, and they've got something as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think it comes back to relationship, and that we grow within relationship, and we need to be challenged, and we need, you know, to be sharpened by each other. And you know, we need our, you know, in a very high level way, polarization in a more balanced and beautiful way, to like pull tension in other directions so that we can see new perspectives, and to help strengthen us, you know, on our shadows that are hard to look at or see. We can, you know, the people who are doing the work can help us with that in a kind way, and help us to grow as quickly and painlessly as possible. And yeah, I don't think we're supposed to do it alone. And we are already being affected by each other so much. So how sweet it would be to be in community that's evolving and growing together, and supporting on that path. And it's what my heart's crying out for, and I feel like many others. You know, it's part of the motivation to do these videos, and to speak out loud, and to wonder out loud about the things that are happening on our planet that seem to be so important to be addressing right now. And yet they just keep getting kind of swept under the rug so that a low-level drone of monotony can continue.
Yeah, I mean, so we're surrounded by people. I'm going to keep using the chakra analogy. I'm not massively into it, but it's totally fine. Perhaps that's the job, is to activate each aspect to be fully online, and that what we're seeing is people with different aspects that are active, but others that are dormant, and that we can see that if you have dormant aspects, you're not going to be articulated as a spiritual, soulful, conscious thing. There's going to be misalignment. There's going to be imbalance. There's going to be let's call it illness, mental illness, spiritual illness, psychic illness, right? And so the problem that I personally am finding is that the spiritual community, I think, is ill, is imbalanced, hasn't activated all their chakras. And so here's the dilemma: is how do you convince people who are surviving a horrendous, terrible, energetic and experience to engage with it purposefully, to bear more pain, to be more often out of the state of joy?
Hmm.
You know, how do you justify? This is where I struggle, is like, I feel like that's the solution. I feel like if everyone could do that, if they truly fully activated, and I said this before we started recording, but if you activate, let's say, all the chakras, the grounded root, sexuality, survival, you know, and the mystical, psychic, cosmic, God, and you're activating all of your chakras, you become a circuit, a full circuit, which communicates between heaven and earth, let's say, and that they meet in your heart. And that is when you are fully articulated as an energetic that is balanced and matches, and then the conversation between all possibility and the real world is balanced into useful magic.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that full range is integrated within the individual. And then that individual, gets to interact with other individuals that are accessing and making use of and integrating that full range within them. And then a different level of co-creation can begin to happen. Different level of healing on the planet. I feel like we've reached a good point in our conversation, and maybe we can move into a final phase of doing a channeling or a higher self to close out this conversation. And before we do, I just want to give you an opportunity to say any closing words or statements before we move into that final phase of our.
I hope that anyone that needs to hear what we talked about gets to hear this, and that it's useful and helpful. And it's been healing for me to be able to even speak this way, and that only can happen because you're able to hear it. So thanks for that.
Thanks, Lex. It's been a pleasant and uplifting conversation. I feel it started from maybe even a more, say even for myself, a little more like agitated, upset this evening, just with life in general, just from what's I had been processing. And sometimes good conversations are motivated by like a little bit of angst or discomfort, or desire to see things moving in a little bit more positive direction, or with a little more sweetness. And somehow this conversation's found its own tone or resonance that's been really calming and soothing and good. So I appreciate it as well, and appreciate our time together to kind of talk about what's most real and important for us. Yeah, and now just to introduce this final phase of the channeling of the higher self, and and to put it in the context of what we've spoken of tonight. In some ways, it's allowing our full spectrum self to be present, for our highest form of consciousness to be present throughout our entire being, and to feel that aliveness, that presence, and that connection to the full spectrum of life. Our clarity to source, and to our clearest understanding of who we are and what we are. And so, yeah, Lex and I will just take a moment to drop in and try to gather the sweetest essence of what we've talked about tonight. If there's anything left that wants to be spoken, or repeated, just for emphasis. And I'll take a couple breaths, and whenever you're ready, Lex, you go ahead and start us off.
I had a channeling some time ago now, 20 odd years ago, and it said, find the others. And I have been trying to find the others. And hopefully, as you keep telling me to be authentic, and I'm being authentic, but also at the same time getting better at the translations, I think to be fully, if anyone's brave enough to be fully magical and spiritual, and to fully present consciously, and to activate all the awarenesses, all the aspects of awareness, and possibly maybe let's call them all the chakras at the same time, that would be the most respectful thing you could do for the gift of being. There is a bit of a price to pay, and that is all I can say about that.
Yeah, I'm getting the two words desire and bravery, and that we have that desire to connect with each other, with others, at these more real levels, at these more intimate levels, at these more pure levels. And it, I guess I'm getting to follow that desire, to let that desire lead us into new territory, because it's kind of unknown, unmapped, or uncreated territory. And it's going to take that desire to make us step out into that unknown. And it's going to take bravery to do it. And because many of us have done it and it didn't work, and it hurts when it doesn't work, and we can lose hope. And so there's where the bravery is involved, is that like to trust that desire to keep finding a way, and that there's something beautiful about that desire, that we both want to connect with others and want to see a world where more of that connection's happening, and knowing that that will begin to create a different reality. So the desire and the bravery. Yeah. And that, thank you for listening, and thank you for your share. And um, I heard in your share that it takes, it's almost like there's sacrifice involved in that. It can hurt in the trying, or the reaching, or the experimenting, and I guess none of us will ever any of us that are brave enough to do it will be able to respect that in each other, that it's taken bravery from all of us, and it's taken sacrifice from all of us to make these connections, and to keep trying, and to keep building it despite a lot of reflections that would say that there's not much of it happening on the planet. It's been a lovely evening. I want to thank you, Lex, for always showing up, and always being brave enough to challenge what's being said, so that we can get into something even more deep and more real and more authentic. And then once we get to that space, for you continue to show up with your truth, and with your authenticity, and with the beauty of your inner self. So thank you for sharing that with me, and with everyone who watches and listens.
It was a good one. I like what you said about the it's uncharted territory as well. That's you hit the nail on the head. I think these conversations, when they get really exciting, and when spiritual people really push, we're going to move beyond the conversations where everybody knows what the fuck's going on, into what, and then we'll be there.
Exactly. Yeah, we're going to have to create it together. Thank you so much, Lex. Thank you, everyone who's watching, and see you next time. Good night.